My name is Jim Estep. Hopefully you're in the right room assessing your church's health. And so we're going to kind of look at the health of a congregation. As I said, if you want a copy of this, feel free to email me. I'll put my email and contact information up on front, in front of the board. But I want to talk about a congregation with a difference. Jim Collins, I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he wrote a book called From Good to Great. It was a business book. And he noted that there were churches beginning to use that book to guide them. And he must be a believer because he actually published a second book about that thick saying, don't use my book to run churches or to run not-for-profit organizations or community service organizations. You are not businesses. So he self-published a little book saying, this is how you have to baptize the ideas into a church setting. And he did that without anybody asking him. He even paid the bill for the publishing. And the book became so successful, the people that published his first book bought the rights and published it, okay? But what he said was this. Let's say you have like congregation 1 and 2, and they're both doing really, really good, and they've got parallel tracks, and they're pretty well they're existing the same way. And all of a sudden, there is an infection point. And by that, I mean there is a catalytic positive change in the first congregation. Maybe it's coming to the E2 conference, and the elders go back and say, no more, we're running things differently from now on. Because this church just keeps going on its normal path. This church does what? Takes off. And the question is, what are the principles that explain the difference? Now, in addition to that, he identified something that he called the systemic gap, which some things happen you just can't control. Like if a church down the street split and all of a sudden you get 50 of their members, well, hey, our attendance shot up. What do you know? That's something you can't count on all the time. But his whole point was we can identify, hey, at this point, a fundamental change occurred in this church, and it had a tangible result. Okay? Now, if I say, okay, so if I want to assess the health of my church, what makes my church healthy? Well, first off, healthy churches actively engage their community. Okay? Now, by the way, I'm going to put a couple of critical questions that you need to ask yourself as leaders. How engaged are you beyond the walls of your church building? How do you equip and resource the church to build relationships with non-believers? How many ministries are intentionally open to non-believers? And what is your digital footprint in the cyber world? Now, by the way, quick little note here. What this means is you have an active, positive presence in the lives of non-believers. These are non-Christians. So is a 6:30 in the morning Bible study in Leviticus at IHOP a good ministry for this? No. I don't know believers who would show up to that, okay? And if they do, they have the assurance of salvation without question. Okay. The simple fact of the matter is, this is where you go, at this level of engagement, how much Christian content is there? Very little. This, I'll give you some, here's why we have to have this, because we need to form positive relationships between Christians and non-Christians. Now, why is this important? How many of you have a smartphone on you right now? Just do me a favor. I'll give you a little bit of time to do it, and I'll go on, but I'll call on you. Go to Google and just type in this phrase, why are Christians so? And it'll try to anticipate what you're asking. Why are Christians so? Now, go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead with this. Here's some ideas. This could be support groups. People who are having trouble are looking for help. Your church could go, hey, we're willing to help. Sports ministries, yeah, come on in. You can join our sports league even if you're not a Christian. Contact events, special things. We're about ready to host the fall festival for the whole community of Fayetteville. Games, hay rides, the whole bit. Special seminars, holiday and community events. Christmas is coming. If you're not already, already planning that, anticipating non-believers being there, guests being there, teas and coffees, special interest groups, affinity groups, ladies scrapbooking club. And you go, what does it have to do with being a Christian with those things? Fulfilling the commission to get to know non-believers so that you build relationships so you can introduce them to who?
Jim, there's a food pantry for me.
Oh, a food pantry? Yeah. The big key there is making sure we're forming relationships. People go, oh, but Jim, we go out and we pass out water bottles. That's great, but there's no, how much relationship is there in, hey, here you go. It's a good deed and it's community awareness, but you're not doing what? You're not interacting. You're not really interacting with people. By the way, why are Christians so, what are some of the answers?
Negative and judgmental.
Negative and judgmental. What else? Hypocritical.
Yeah. So willing to stretch biblical text to hate homosexuality.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let me say this. I have a biblical view on that issue. But in the Bible, does it say hate? It's like, no, okay, any sin. I'm like any sin, which we shouldn't be going, well, you can't come in here because you're not. No, you're going to hear the gospel and we're going to hold you accountable, but, no. What else?
Why are we white?
Okay, yeah, we don't have a lot of color distinction. What else? How about, hypocrite, angry, etc. Here's my point. If that's what people in the world think of us, why would they ever darken the doors of a church? You see, that's why this step for church health is so important. Because if you don't have a community footprint, if people in your neighborhood don't go, oh, we know that church. It's a loving place. They host these events. They're in our community. When the neighbor's house burned down, they were there. Fantastic. By the way, just a little note. Trying to think what I was going to say now. This is the opportunity for the church to really build relationship with the non-believer, to get these stereotypes washed down, with the drain. And all of a sudden, my home church had a support group for parents of teenagers called Peanuts, Parents Going Nuts. And that way, think about it. I don't know why Sally's behaving this way. Every 2 weeks, my church gets together down at the coffee shop, or don't even say church, say a group gets together down at the coffee shop if you want to join us. Halfway through the conversation, notice half these people go to a church. You mean you guys have trouble with your teenagers too? Yeah, but I'll tell you what, we've got a youth group to help us, and the youth minister, and really, okay. And all of a sudden you're having this positive interaction. See what I'm getting at? So that leads us to the next thing. Healthy churches intentionally share the gospel. If people are already having a positive encounter with Christians and they start asking questions, or at least it gives you the open opportunity to do what? Can I tell you about my faith? So healthy churches, how many external baptisms were done in the last 3 years? By external, I mean people from outside the church, finding out about Jesus and coming to him. How do you follow up with guests during and after worship? How equipped and resourced are your people for evangelism? How user-friendly or seeker-sensitive prepared are they?
I really like the debate track.
Yeah, the church I used to, when I grew up in, a group of ladies, God bless them, would go home after worship and bake fresh bread. Put it in like bags. We'd pick it up in the afternoon. We'd get the list. Oh, look, the Smiths were visiting. We'd be at the Smiths' door around 5:30, about dinner time. Hey, hope this isn't too late. We just have some fresh bread for you from Southern Acres Christian Church. Thanks for being a guest this morning. There's some information about the church in here. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. Yeah, we'd have 86% of them show up for a second visit, probably to get more bread, but they didn't. But the simple fact is, notice, the point being here, ask yourself those questions. Hold yourself, are we really intentional about sharing the gospel? It amazes me how many churches say, oh no, we're very big on the gospel. When was the last time you trained anybody how to present the gospel? What do you mean trained? Well, I mean, it's not just rote memorization. It's you have to teach them how to bring Jesus into a conversation. And if somebody says, well, what do you mean salvation? Are you going to use the 3 circles approach, which by the way is a real cool one. There's even an app for it. You can look up the word 3 circles, download it, and you can swipe, okay? And it draws it for you, or it shows you how to draw it on a napkin, or you're going to use the Roman road, or you're going to use the 2 mountains, but if you don't teach the method, they don't even have a way to present it. So how well prepared are they to really do this? Because the need to evangelize the lost and introduce them to Jesus means you're having a healthy church. And that can be done by the pulpit ministry probing events, things like, hey, we're having a special event after church next week. If you're interested in learning more about Jesus, about our congregation, we're having this special luncheon, come and be there. Focused events on for special groups, special interests, classes on themes such as, there's a typo, marriage, parenting, finances, introduction to faith, welcome to. We have a class called Explore Heritage. So you can come and visit, talk to us about heritage for 6 weeks. Also Heritage in 5, that's as soon as service is over, we say, hey, if you want to learn more about us, meet our preacher, come on down where it says Heritage in 5 and the light turns on that says Heritage in 5. We can introduce you to Heritage in 5 minutes. We can tell you our mission, our vision, our values, and a little bit about ourselves, get to know you a little bit. And if you have more questions, you can go to the blue umbrella. That's where I sit. The blue umbrella is literally that. It is a welcome center with a big blue beach umbrella over it. Can't miss it because it's right in the middle of the lobby. And if they come up and go, I want to know about your discipleship path. Here's 1-page description of it. At the bottom is my phone number. Take a look at it. I can walk you through it. We can get coffee. I'll buy. Perfect. I want to know more about your classes on Sunday morning. I want to know about small groups. We have literature on all that. It's not spread out here. It's in little folders, so that they ask, I can pull it out and give it to them. Integrate new believers. Okay, so you've introduced them. You kind of have made good relationship. You've now presented the gospel to them, and they said, yes, I want to get baptized. Great, now they are new believers. How do you integrate them? That's a third healthy church thing. What do you intentionally do with new believers? What specially prepared resources or initiatives do you do for them? How does the church welcome and embrace new believers? Where do new believers should we go? I'm sorry, no, that's correct. Sorry. Where do new believers do a spiritual inventory or ministry fit exam? In other words, we're new. How has God gifted us, and where's the best place for me to serve in the church? Not that they're ready to, but by the end of that 6 or 7 or 8 week class, you can then assign our path as a 1-day Discover Heritage. It's really a 1 hour. I'll sit down with you over coffee. Everything involves coffee, if you can't tell. Look over it, sit there and chat and talk. Great. Now, if you want to do the 6-week Explore Heritage, during Explore Heritage, they do those inventories after the class. Hey, you want to go out and talk a little bit? We got the inventories back. We can tell you what your results were. And then we're ready to say, I really think you'd do well if you started attending a class, or you started this new small group, or you started serving in this ministry. And so they are integrated into the church within 8 weeks. New believers require special attention, incubation, for the first few months, years of their walk with Jesus. And ideas like small groups, Sunday school, other classes, maybe doctrinal studies, Christian practices, sharing your faith, special new believers events, and even mentoring, which would be like one-on-one. Now, fourth indicator of health. They provide for faith formation. Some critical questions. Repeat. How well defined is your discipleship pathway? You know, it has to go beyond the baptismal. It has to go beyond the new Christians class. What's next has to be asked in the discipleship realm. Do you have a tiered approach to discipleship where, you know, the meat just gets deeper and deeper, which, by the way, footnote, you know, sometimes say, oh, we've got a lot of options for people. Yeah, but if every single, like we got a real smorgasbord here. Yeah, but if everything is pasta. See what I'm getting at? It's all at the same level. It doesn't matter whether I go to a small group or a class or a Wednesday night Bible study. It's all pretty much at the same level. There's no challenge eventually. By the way, I love Olive Garden. And right now they have the never-ending pasta bowl. But at the same time, I laugh a little bit. Why? Because what is pasta? I mean, I don't care if it's in a big, long string or it's in a tube or it's in the shape of a corkscrew. It's still what? Starch. It's, you know, still, it's still pasta. But they will go, oh, there's all these different kinds of pasta. No, it's just shaped differently, okay? The problem is if that's all you've got, then somebody could gorge themselves on everything your church has to offer and still be starving spiritually. And so my point is, what is the difference technically between, for example, life groups and what you do on Sunday morning in a class? And then what is the difference between a Sunday morning class and a Wednesday night class? I'm not telling you what to do. I know we say the lowest level of instruction is really in the small group, followed by the Sunday morning class, followed by the Wednesday night class, which has the deeper instruction. And we have a plan, something called Equip You, where it's once every 3 months. We're going to have an all-day seminar on one topic, like evangelism, how to help a friend, those kind of leadership, servant leadership issues. So that over a course of 2 years, they get 8 days of study on a very deep level with somebody who gets called in, and we're going to open it up to area churches to come in as well. But once again, and do you have age-related focused ministries? You know, focused meaning like children's, youth, senior citizen, maybe moms ministry, men's and women's ministries, those kind of, just once again, looking at the demographic of who's in your church and who's in your community, are you targeting them? And when I say multidimensional, it's all not about the brain, it's all not about your feelings, it's not all about your skill set, it's about what? All three. So are you really providing for the nutrition of someone's complete spiritual life? Because we want to promote a vibrant, growing environment for faith as a lifelong relationship with Jesus Christ. By the way, my daughter loves palm trees. When the conference is over, I have to run because David has to get a flight out of St. Louis. So I've got to get him down to St. Louis. But then after that, we're heading up to Springfield, Illinois, where my children live. And we're going to have dinner with them, see the grandkids. But my daughter, when she was young, fell in love with palm trees. And she had never seen one except for in a book. And as we're driving on I-75 South toward Florida for vacation one day, we had a red minivan, and all of a sudden I heard a splat. Thought I'd hit something. But I didn't feel anything. I just heard it. And it was her hitting the back window with her hands and face. Because we were driving by Tifton, Georgia, where the first palm tree is. And she spotted it in the parking lot of a Starbucks. So it was just, it was a God thing. And pulled off. She got her little latte and sat there at the tree. We got a picture of her. Yeah, she was 11 years old and already had her own coffee. It's okay. And so bottom line is she thoroughly loved it, but she asked me, Dad, why can't we bring a palm tree back to Illinois? See? We go, because the environment would kill it in a matter of a few months. Think about this. Your church is like an ecology. It's like an environment that supports a particular kind of Christian. That's your discipleship path. That's how many tiers, how deep can the roots really get? How many dimensions of learning and development do you provide for? Do you overemphasize one over the other? That's going to create a context that, sorry, that is my phone. I have no idea who's calling me. Okay. So for example, this could be your worship, your pulpit ministry, small groups, a little deeper maybe. Sunday school, tiered approach, get them deeper. Like on Sunday morning, we have a class for the young Christian, middle of the road, and then the deeper study. We just intentionally do that on Sunday mornings. Training and resourcing for service, ministry, and missions opportunities. Deeper life events like retreats and let's go away for 3 days to the church camp and do a in-depth study of focused needs ministry. Like in addition to the women's ministry, we have a mom's ministry. And the mom's ministry is for people with new children. Fifth level, they call others to lead others. How healthy is your church? Well, how engaged are you beyond the walls of your congregation? How do you equip people to build? Sorry, that is a typo in a major way. It did not transfer over. I apologize. I will have to fix it, but I know what goes here. How involved are the people of your church in doing ministry? What percentage of people do you approach and say, we have a special ministry for you? Remember what the previous slide said? You've already done a ministry inventory. How do you follow up on that and go, hey, I think you do great in the worship team. I think you'd be great on the grounds team. I think you'd be great as a teacher. I think you'd be great as a youth sponsor, a children's worker, etc. How do you do that? Well, once again, you've got to have a path that says we intentionally follow up and looking for people who are already involved in ministry. Are they showing signs of leadership? Are they showing signs of maturing? Because, by the way, how many of you were here in my last hour? Where do your leaders come from? Your elders come from this group. The ones that are already serving, already active, already learning, already involved. Those are the potential leaders that you say, let's step forward. I'll correct this before I send it out to you all. So in Christ, ministry was meant to be shared and maturing to the point of being able to lead others. So leadership training and resourcing, leadership team retreats and advances, self-directed study, development ministries, as in we're going to try to develop your skills, develop your thinking, elder development, ministry, and leadership conferences. So what we did was we gave 5 vital signs of a church: actively engage their community, intentionally share the gospel, integrate their new believers. They provide for faith formation. They call others to lead others. But is it just that? Is that it? Great, Jim. That's wonderful. Well, there is some underlying precursors and practices for church health. Now, when I say that, it's kind of like this. Whenever I go to my doctor, and how many of you have heard the same words? Well, it's diet and exercise. Diet and exercise. Okay. And the thing is, if you did diet and exercise, okay. So you want me to do this habitual practice over and over and over to simply develop a better lifestyle so it is a lot easier to be healthy. Right. Okay. What are those kind of things? Well, everything I said, those 5 ways of engaging, only work if, you have a sense of purpose, and it trumps everything. Mission, vision, and mission. You already heard today 4 out of 5 churches are member-driven rather than mission-driven. Well, that's true. And that's the problem. If you're not mission-driven, if anybody who says, well, I'll get upset if you do it that way, can thwart you fulfilling the mission of the church, that's why it's not going to work. Oh, yeah. Well, who was it? Ben Merrill. I don't know if that name is familiar, but yeah, great guy. Ben said, every Sunday he would have somebody pop in and go, that worship service offended me. He said, oh, well, good, because if it doesn't offend me, at least in one way, I did something wrong. I mean, he would just tell them that, it wasn't made for you specifically. So yeah, if I don't offend at least one person or myself, something went wrong. And I'm like, that's the way to do it. All right. Prioritize. What you're really saying is you have to prioritize your mission, And not only that, but you have to use your vision and mission in decision making. It doesn't do any good if it's just a motto, a slogan. It's like, okay, we have a decision to make. Okay, does that help us advance the vision and mission of this church? Well, no. Then why is it on the agenda? Why are we even talking about it? Well, here's something we could do. Okay, does that really relate to our vision and mission, or is it just because it sounds like fun or whatever? Now, by the way, before you think I'm an ogre, I don't mind if somebody says, hey, can we just have a golf outing because we want to just have time together? Can we not just go have a fishing trip? Okay, we can label it elder development and go. Okay, but that's my point. If that becomes the go-to and nothing really has a purpose, you end up with churches that just don't go anywhere. They're just stagnant. Our mission has to become like our meta rationale for the church. It's the overarching reason for everything. So if somebody were to come to me and say, Jim, why do you have classes on Sunday morning? That's so traditional. Well, it's not about being contemporary. It's the fact that we have classes on Sunday morning to help grow people's faith in Jesus Christ that helps us live out the value of connecting people to Jesus and growing their faith, that helps us develop them into transforming the world for Jesus. So there's an absolute tie to the mission of the church in everything we do. And if I can't draw that line quickly, then we're probably doing something that what? Yeah, it's just sapping resource, it's sapping people, it's sapping money, it's sapping time, space, you name it. It's taking away from our margin, and it isn't really contributing anything to our church. By the way, another precursor, you can chant this with me, methods are many, principles are few, methods always change, principles never do. It's this issue of flexibility. Be proactive, have bias toward actions. Where is the dust in your church? If something's gathering dust, you should be asking, why is it here? Hopefully it's not a Bible, okay? How many millennials do you have in your church? That's a good question. Have we lost that generation? I put this up here because David Stone at Southeast, he just retired, by the way. He had a little film clip on the Southeast web page, and he said, you can't reach an MP4 generation with 8-track technology. And the problem is, half of you are asking what an MP4 is, and the other half's wondering what an 8-track is. And that's the thing, and I'm like, I get it. That's really the stress. I mean, I teach the senior citizens Bible study. I mean, they're the ones that have most of the trouble with the changes being made. And I sit there and go, I'll be the first one to admit it, the fact that we sing one hymn a worship service. I remember the hymns. I grew up on hymns. Okay, I get it. Now let me explain why we don't sing but one hymn per Sunday. Okay, all right, I'm there with you. It's okay. But once again, trying to make sure our methods are strategic, that they're effective. By the way, let me back this up just real quick. David has the analogy of a flagpole. Flagpoles are put deep into concrete in the ground because it does not change. That's the Word of God, the post. But our methods are like the flag. It does what? Yeah. But it needs the flagpole or it'll just fly off. But notice the they and the their elements and all those previous things. We equip the church. They do this, they do that. Because what is the church? You see, this is really, how do we really define church? Do we mean leadership, the staff, the programs? No. To get total church buy-in, to where the 80% is doing the work, you have to have that innovative sense of convincing them of the mission, getting them to articulate it themselves, to become involved in fulfilling it. Then it becomes something they want to see done. They are the church. And that's why when somebody says, like, well, Jim, all this change, all these new ideas, et cetera, what happens when somebody doesn't like it? Then we haven't done our job teaching them what to like. My grandson hates spinach. Guess what he's going to eat tonight? He's going to eat, why? Because it's good for him, but he doesn't like it. It's good for him. See what I'm getting at? Sometimes you have to spend some time teaching them we have to do things because it's the right thing to do, not because it's the easy thing to do. By the way, buy-in, participation, real unity in the sense of united for a greater good. It's the idea of us using the word we, not I or they. And another little tidbit here, intentionally strategic in what we're doing and how we're doing ministry. We need to know the how, the why, the how, and the what. Simon Sinek talks about start with why. And if everybody really understood why instead of battling and discussing the what. Here's the thing. If there is no why or how, okay, and I start tinkering with the whats, you changed the worship service time. Well, without a why or a how, there's no reason to change it other than personal like and dislike. But if I can look at somebody and say, we moved it to 10:30 for this reason, and it's an objective reason, it's not because Jim wanted it or this person wanted it or somebody else, then we're good. If the why is tied to our mission. Developing a 1, 2, 3 year strategic plan looking forward. Management versus leadership. Like I mentioned earlier, like calling a student minister. Do you wait till you have the need, or do you understand you can anticipate the need and even be prepared for something before it's a reality? And we also look at your budget. That's the real plan. Where you are giving money, where you are allocating money is really where your priorities are. So some people, we don't have a strategic plan. I can tell your 1 year plan, just let me see your budget. Because if I look at your budget, I do some church coaching, and they go, yeah, we had to cut the budget, so we got rid of the evangelism money. See what I'm getting at? I can tell your priorities. I can tell your values. I can tell what direction you're taking. If we want to look like this in 1 year, what has to happen right now and then in 2 years or 3 years? I put this up in the previous one, but we just worked through this as a staff, understanding our vision and mission to transform your community for Jesus. So our values are love God, love people, follow Jesus. What's our general strategy, broad stroke? Connect them to Jesus, grow with and through Jesus, and serve like Jesus. By the way, we had a fifth column that said Christology, where it talked about Jesus as Savior, Jesus as a Lord, Jesus as servant. And the simple fact is, worship service, the Discover and Explore Heritage, life groups, going deeper classes, Bible studies, focused ministries, community engagement, they align this way. Why are you doing what we're doing on one page? So a prescription for follow-up. Address the foundations for a healthy church ASAP. Those things I said about mission, about being proactive for change. Become a mission-driven versus a member-driven elder team. And I know that's hard. I know when I was talking about innovation, let me just share this story. I was at a church that decided to relocate their building. Now, by the way, that's a nice way of saying you can't move the building. It means you're going to build a new one, and you're going to move the people. And frankly, we knew we had the votes. The congregational meeting was there. We knew we had the votes. And in walked Rose. And Rose is about 84 years old, and had always sat right on the front pew. By the way, anytime you preached, she always made sure there was a water bottle up there in the pulpit. Dear saintly woman. And she came in looking just, and here Ron and I, he's the senior pastor, we are just excited. We're giddy for the congregational meeting. And here she walks in just very slowly. We go, Rose, are you feeling okay? I'm okay, boys. she called us boys. Okay. You don't seem too good, Rose. Is everything okay? And she said, well, I used to live just a few blocks from here, and I've attended this church for 50 years. And my husband attended this church, and he passed away, and my kids attended this church and grew up in it, and they moved off, and people in my neighborhood have grown old, and they've moved away, and the houses have been sold. Now I lost my house, and they moved me into the, assisted living. I just guessed the one thing I didn't think was ever going to change was my church. And at this point, we're sitting there almost in tears, like, we are horrible people. We are going to die right now, okay? The Lord is going to strike us. We were feeling horrible, but we looked at her and we said, Rose, a couple of weeks from now, when things start on this, if everything goes like we think it's going to go, we're going to make sure you have a pew right on the front row. And we are going to be sitting right down here with you. And you are going to look behind you and you're going to see Mrs. Smith. And we'll make sure all your friends are right here in this section, just like they are right now. And I'm going to expect to find that water bottle. And sure enough, it was more than a few weeks. But a few months later, when we started having worship in the new building, there she was, front row. Water bottle was in the pulpit. And she lived a couple more months. But she got to see her church get, even bigger. By the way, that was also when we had Bob Palmer, the guy I mentioned earlier. And he actually came up and said, do you remember we used to be at Elm Street, the elementary school? Oh, yeah. And then we moved here and we built that little part of the building. Oh, yeah. And then we built an education wing. Yeah. Then we built the new sanctuary. Yeah. So we've never been the same church. We were always different. We always changed. Every generation moved, added on, put their own distinct. This generation realizes we've outlived the property. We've got to go to a new place, just like the first generation moved from the school to this site. He put it all in historical context because he was a champion for us. And when he passed away, that was about 700 people at a funeral. It was an amazing, he was just an amazing man. But get that mission-drivenness going. Design a comprehensive approach to ministry that hits all 5 vital signs. Engages the community, preaches the gospel, teaches the gospel, shares the gospel, integrates new people into the body, continues to help them develop their faith, and then identifies them as leaders and gives them the training for that. Recruit, equip, and resource the church to fulfill its vision and mission. Get as many people involved in as many ways as possible. And then set your elder team on a learning curve. Make sure they do not become concrete. How can we assist? Well, a couple of things. We have resources. You've seen that. I've seen an elder box, the toolbox. Video consult. Some people go, Jim, we can't really fly you in and have you rent a car and drive to our church and do a one-day seminar or something like that. Well, before you ever jump to that conclusion, you could have me just video chat or have David video chat or have Gary video chat into an elders meeting, a leadership retreat, whatever. Video chatting is a very easy anybody ever use Skype? Anybody have Facebook? You realize Facebook Messenger has a video feature? So, that's not high tech at all. You could have us do a 1 or 2 day seminar, one person coming in and doing that. You could invite other churches to share the cost. You could come to a conference or an event like this one. We're going to be, by the way, I think this is our last major event of the year. We are going to be at ICOM, the International Conference on Mission. E2 has about 4 sessions there. But you could have us come in and do a conference, come and do 1 or 2 day, but also coaching and consulting. Now that's a bigger commitment. That's like coming in, I personally do like a 3-tier event, 3 different trips for multiple days each. And I come in and basically do an assessment, develop a sense of, okay, here's the big ticket items. Now we're developing a strategy of how to fix it. And it takes time because we're actually working with members of the church. It's not just the elder team, and you can get them involved by saying, hey, we've got somebody coming in to really take a look at things. We need you to be there. But we also have partner congregations. These are congregations that love what E2 is doing, and so they actually count us as a missionary. And they support us as a missionary. And that level of support, we're sending you information about what we're doing, how we're doing, and plus we're just like a missionary, we're accountable to you. So, we have probably about 5 minutes, question, comments, confusions. And while that's up, I'm going to put this. Remember, I will fix some of the typos and such, but you can contact me through there. There's my email address and my phone number.
Is there anything that stands out that makes the church unhealthy?
Well, couple of things. I mean, and by the way, please realize I'm going to make a statement that's true 90% of the time. When there's heavy conflict, it's probably not healthy. I mean, I know churches that have split, churches that have, Secondly, when a church just waits too long, I don't want to get into names or locations, but I'm doing a church coaching right now where the church is down to 17. And I'm like, I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm going to give them some ideas and some pathways. Every time I come into any church, I really tell them this. Even a healthy church has 5 choices. It's just okay, let me give this illustration. If a fly lands on the wall, I have a choice, a fly swatter, I can ignore it, I can use a fly swatter or a sledgehammer. Now the sledgehammer will indeed kill the fly. It will also take out the drywall, okay? It'll do more damage to the wall than the fly ever could. So it's not just a matter of what are my options, it's which option best fits your situation. So I go into every church and say, you really have five options. You can continue as you are. By the way, if you're a healthy church and things are going well, and I come in and confirm that and go, yeah, just a few minor little tweaks, keep going, hallelujah. The second thing you could second option churches have is, okay, we know there's a problem or two in a certain given area. If we fix those targeted areas, things are good. Absolutely. That's fine. You could have a church that comes in and says, number 3, we're going to try to do a complete relaunch. We need to erase the board and just start all the way over with mission, vision, values, and how we're going to structure. And we're almost becoming like a new church plant in an existing church. That's very difficult, but that usually is the most effective if it's possible, okay? Third or fourth, you could take the option of we are so far gone, but we still want to stay in the ministry. There's got to be another church near here that would count us as a satellite, that would essentially come in and take us over and, basically breathe life back into us. Okay, that's an option. The fifth option is what I call the legacy option. And it's, okay, if you really know you're going to go out, you have a choice. You can wait till the bitter end. Or you could say, we're going to have a funeral. We're going to sell the property or give it to a church camp or a college, but it's going to be in our name. So there's going to be this new, scholarship at Central under the name of our church. So it's the legacy. We're leaving a legacy. So that it just doesn't go out of existence and later becomes a Taco Bell and nobody knows it was ever a church. And by the way, that does happen. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, and one of the best pizza places in Lexington is called Joe Bologna's. And I've actually gone downtown to Joe Bologna's and sat there. And as I sat there eating my pizza, I looked up and I saw a Star of David. And I looked around, those are stained glass. We're in a synagogue. That synagogue went out of business. And it's now a pizza. And my point is, the problem is, as I lived in Lincoln, Illinois, one time the AT&T store was a church. The Camel's Hair Salon is a church, or was. And you start going, so these were church buildings that what? And now got bought out. And I just go, might be better to preserve some kingdom assets for the kingdom. Yeah, please.
You may not have time to answer
Okay.
this, but I had lunch, and I hope I don't offend the guys I had lunch with, but from small churches
Sure.
that 25, 50 people, and there's more small churches within 15, 20 miles. Why don't they consolidate schools?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Okay, since we're states away, we're actually in conversation with another church about doing that. Very, very preliminary stages. It can be done. 9 times out of 10 it fails. Because you've got, let's say you're going to try and bring 4 churches together. You've got 4 sets of DNA. And tradition. And how it's done. And so bottom line is, if you can get a third party to come in and kind of say, I'm not the referee, I'm kind of the negotiator, here's some sticky points, like for example, let me ask, if I said, who can pass communion? Men, women, that's going to cause a problem if those 4 churches come together. So we have to work through that right now. Are you a board-led, elder-led, or what? Well, we have a church board, we have elders-led, we have, okay, so we're going to, bottom line is what you really end up doing, the best, easiest solution is you get people together to say we are creating a 5th entity. It is not our way, your way, it is a new way. And then those 4 churches have to buy into what? The new way. And by the way, you're going to lose your name because it's not that church anymore. So you're going to have a whole new church name. It's just those 4 churches are now coming together. That does work when they do it that way, but that also requires a great amount of kingdom-mindedness because they have to be willing to say that building is not a sacred cow and we can give it up. And yeah, I've seen churches do it, but like I said, more times than most, it fails. And by the way, you're right, it works for public schools because there's somebody at the top dictating it. This would be 4 schools willing to come together on their own because they all recognize a common need and desire. You know, that's what would have to happen. But once again, the probability goes up when a third party who has no vested interest in any one of the models can come in and create that 5th entity, so to speak. But no, I'm all in favor of that because, I mean, for example, I have my father-in-law, he's passed away now, but my father-in-law was a United Methodist pastor, circuit rider. He would actually, nowadays they use cars instead of horses, but he would drive between congregations on Sunday morning, and sometimes he wasn't even at a church, but they were like 20 miles apart. They'd been established in the 1800s when it was a long, ride.
Very little effect.
Yeah, and that's just it. And I'm like, I never could understand why they just didn't all combine. And he would say, well, you can get an order from up on high, but people have invested time, energy, money, everything else into that church, and it's the church their grandfather was in, they're not going to give it up. And I'm like, okay. That's why, by the way, the church I'm at doesn't, and I shouldn't say they refuse, but they don't put plaques on the wall. Because you can't say, like, this pew was donated by my, no. No, we're not going to put something up we're going to have to pry out later. We're not going to build any sacred cows that we're going to have to slaughter later. And we made it. Yeah, that's the problem. So, guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. There's just a little bit more. Don't run home.